Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. In 5 minutes I'm going to show you how to do midsummer care for your tomato plants. I use 3 basic things depending on what's going on with the tomatoes. An organic granular fertilizer on the left, anything that's a 5-5-5 and P&K, up or down a few numbers is fine, just get what's on sale. In the middle is my organic fish emulsion. Just follow the instructions for setting it up in your watering can, and then any of the synthesized or human processed chemical type fertilizers, although everything is a chemical. You could use Miracle-Gro, Vigoro, and the other one is Plant Expert. They just have a higher nitrogen. It's good for emergencies, and you just mix up a can. So I go over to my tomato plants. We're actually at July 18th, and I take a look at them. These are indeterminate tomatoes. That means they will continue to grow and grow. They are not as green as I want them to be, not as big as I want them to be. They're going to need to be staked up. Over the next 7 days I will do that. But today I'm just looking for any kind of problems. Yellowing leaves are okay. Leaves yellow from the bottom for various reasons, and typically it's just the tomato plant taking nutrients from the bottom of the plant and putting them into the upper growth. Nothing to worry about. I also spray my plants every 2 weeks with preventative fungicide. Sometimes I use baking soda, sometimes I use hydrogen peroxide, that's up to you, but these plants are getting a regular spraying to prevent leaf diseases. So looking at this plant, I decide mid-season, a couple handfuls of organic granular fertilizer thrown around the bottom, and then because they're just not as big and as yellow as and as green as I want them to be, I'm going to give them a drink of the water-soluble fertilizer. And 5-10 seconds, just like that. The container soil is not as good as my soil in my garden beds because there's not a lot of compost in there. This will get better each year, and I would water in the other tomato plant. Once they've got their fertilizer, just give them a quick soaking and let that granular fertilizer get wet, and just wash the water soluble down into the root system. And that's how I would take care of this group of plants. Let's go to another one. Here's another tomato section. These plants are nice and green. They're large. They're actually, I was away for 7 days and they've really grown, and I have to pick up all the vines that have fallen over, tie them up to the post. So that's one thing I'm going to do. There's also good space on the bottom. I also look for that. If I have to take leaves from the bottom, I will open them up, and that's just to keep good airflow. But the first thing to do for these plants is to tie them up and take care of the vines that are falling over. All 9 of these plants are producing really well, but they're overgrown. So in this section, I lifted up the vines, tied them to the posts, removed some leaves from the bottom. You can see everything that I took off the plants. Took off some of the suckers and vines and stuff like that, but put space down the middle by removing leaves, and from the bottom. Now, since I've been away for 7 days, these are really overgrown. After these kind of straighten up and grow a little bit for 5 days or so, I will get in there and remove more leaves from the center. But they look pretty good, really green, lots of tomatoes forming on all the plants. There's no need to use the processed fertilizers. It's just not needed. It's a water soluble you don't need. It's okay to use them. They won't hurt you or your plants, but these are just going to get a scattering of the organic granular fertilizer and then a quick watering of the water soluble fish emulsion or the organic fertilizer. That's all they need. And then I would go ahead and then soak this in again with the water. But nice and easy, real quick. Quick eyeball, green, growing well, organic fish emulsion, some granular fertilizer, let them be. Okay, another section is done. Again, I took the leaves from the bottom. That's everything that I pulled off of there. Took a couple vines that were going in places, opened up the space in the middle. Again, as these straighten up over the next 5 days, I will remove more leaves out of the middle. But this is good enough for me to keep my sanity and to help out the tomato plants. You don't have to go nuts with, perfect pruning. It'll drive you crazy. So the airflow is there. When I go to spray, I'll be able to cover the leaves with my fungicide. Tons of nice looking tomatoes. When you're removing leaves down here too, you want to be careful you don't overexpose the tomatoes to the sun. They will get sun scald. The sun will hit them, bleach them. These tomatoes will be fine. But these plants are loaded, and because they're loaded, again, the granular, just a couple handfuls thrown around, and then a nice big drink of the organic water soluble. Water soluble is immediately available to the plant. The organic granular will take weeks and months to break down with soil biology and feed the plant. And then I would do the third one down there and just water it in. So sometimes if my plants are looking yellow, I'll give them the processed fertilizers, fondly known as chemical fertilizers, although again, everything is a chemical. That's not going to hurt your plant, not going to hurt the garden. I like to stress that, not going to hurt you, because sometimes people are scared when they're just getting started with gardening. Try and use compost, try and use organic fertilizer, but the other stuff is okay. Now, these are growing lots of tomatoes, so I'm giving them a boost of the water soluble fertilizer just to support all the tomatoes that are on the plant. We're going to do this one off video, so let me show you one more section. I decided to show the third section. Again, all the leaves I took off, and I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm just cutting leaves away from the bottom, cutting leaves off from the middle, tying up the tomatoes. They're going to be good to go. They're going to be fed the same way. Okay, let's go over to that final section. So the tomatoes I just pruned were my second wave of tomatoes. That's why there's nothing ripe on there. These were the first tomatoes that I put out. There are 4 right here. A lot of tomatoes to harvest. You can see them all in there, some yellow ones. So I'm going to harvest the tomatoes first, and then I'm going to get to just tying the tomatoes up again. I wanted to show you these because this is a mortgage lifter. They get large tomatoes, lots of yellow leaves. That's not a disease, that's not a worry. This variety tends to do that. And with the high heat and some other things going on with the weather, sometimes your plants get stressed, and this is what happens. I'm not worried about that. That yellowing pattern is usually nutritional, heat related, whatever. These leaves are going to die. As soon as it cools down and the tomato plant likes the temperatures, it'll take care of itself. One more thing to stress is earlier I said that I spray these every 2 weeks. It's every 1 or 2 weeks, but I'm on a routine for preventing diseases on these plants, and I really recommend doing that. All right, let me tie these up. So again, tied up these 4 tomato plants, took out leaves from the bottom, that's what remains. Harvested the tomatoes, couple handfuls of the organic granular on the surface, and this plant has a lot of yellow. A lot of the leaves are dying back. I didn't remove the leaves from the center because there's so many tomatoes in there. I want the leaves still to provide some shade while they ripen so the tomatoes don't get sun scald. But this plant is going to get the processed fertilizer. Has a lot more nitrogen in there. And then the other plants, this is the last one, the other 3, this is the third one, gets the water soluble fish emulsion. That's the organic. And then I would just water them in. And then one more issue. There's spots on the leaves right there. Coming around this side, you can see it more. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Right up here. Over there. And that can be the early signs of some sort of leaf spot or early blight is what I get in my area. And different varieties react differently. So this is going to get an emergency spray of hydrogen peroxide. You can find that video on my YouTube channel if you search hydrogen peroxide. So every other day for 3 days, hydrogen peroxide spray, and that should take care of any issue on this plant. I'll also do the surrounding plants just to make sure they're okay. But this is how I do my quick midsummer care of my tomato plants. Take a quick look, prune them, tie them up, fertilizer where needed, and they'll be good to go for the rest of July and August. Thanks for watching, and please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com.